Hey there, Stitchers. This is Debbie Hodge from StitchStories.com. Today I want to talk to you about how a design, how one of my kit designs goes from something like this to something like this. Much more pleasing, much more fun to stitch, something you'll be happy to display. So again, like from this to this. So I'm going to talk about, I've got 5 different kits here with some of the old versions, and I want to show you how I created them. What I want, the reason I'm showing you this is I want you to understand that when I create an embroidery kit design, I spend a lot of time on it, and I have this goal that there will be lots of different stitches, that it will be somewhat like a sampler. There'll be small parts you can dip into, like with Formal Garden. You could stitch, this up here to play with the leaf stitch. You could do these spots over here to play with Lazy Daisy. You could complete one little section at a time and just have a fun time stitching, but also that you'd be really happy to display it. Often I'm thinking of a particular season in which you would display it. You might hang it on the wall, or you might use a plate stand and put it into a vignette. So I want you to have a fun time stitching it. I want you to feel good about gifting it or displaying it. So I'm working with the stitches, with the motif, with the color. So let's take a look at Formal Garden. So again, let's see. This was my first version of Formal Garden. What do you think? Crazy, huh? So, hold on, I've got a bunch of pop-ups here. I was inspired by, I have this wonderful book that a young woman in my life, Elise, gave me, and it's got all kinds of patterns. It's the complete pattern directory, and I really fell in love with Tony Tricky's work. He's, you can still find him on Instagram and follow him, and not he does a lot of work with parks and fountains, and his work is much looser. It's very fun. Mine's not in any way like that, but I was inspired by his parks. I wanted to do a formal garden, a geometric garden. So this is what I started with. I knew I would have these quadrants where I could fill with different stitches. Then I would have these little sections that could be different stitches, and then there'd be a fountain in the middle. So I drew out the fountain, I set up the stitches, and I put all that pathway in, and I realized in my next version that, which is the next version? Hold on. This is the next version. In the next version, I realized that I wanted to, I got rid of that, right? The white space is just as effective as all those little lines. It's not as dark, it's lighter, it's brighter. The mind knows that those pathways are there. We don't need all kinds of gray cobblestones messing with the vibe, right? So, and the other thing that I decided was that I would put the exact same thing in each of these inner quadrants, right? So, and the other thing is I really cleaned up the color palette. So in this version, I'm working with sort of a grape and a green in the quadrants, and then I've got gold, 2 tones of gold out here, and then a pink on the sides. And there's water splashing coming out of the fountain. And then as I kept working, I was thinking I really wanted it to feel, I wanted it to be a design that could go September, October. I wanted it to be more of a harvest design because I had some other summer designs, so I wanted that. So my teammate Amy Kingsford suggested, instead of the pink, why don't I go with a rust? So I changed these to rust. And then the other thing you can see, I tried, like, what if I rotated each of these 90 degrees around a circle? How would that feel? And I can see I took out some of the water. I took out those water drops splashing out of the fountain. So I tried that. In the end, what I decided that I thought looked the most pleasing. So you can see now I've moved also in this version. I got rid of that grape. See how bright the purple was in version 2. So by version 3, I've got a more toned down kind of eggplant color. And in the end, I've got all those colors, and we've got vertical symmetry. So the tops face up, the bottom faces down. So they're symmetrical that way, as opposed to flipping all around, or as opposed to having horizontal. Oh, yes, that horizontal symmetry. I don't know. I've got symmetry up and down. They're mirrored up and down. So that was the finished design for Formal Garden. Let's take a look at another garden. This is Garden Party. So let me tell you about how let me show you what I started with Garden Party. So here was version 1 for Garden Party. So I'm playing with the imagery, I'm playing with the designs, and this is really what I believe is important with any creative work, is we just start and we just play and we just try and we see what we like, we see what works, and we just understand that we're going to iterate. We have faith in the process. So I knew I wanted to work with some lanterns, I wanted to work with some pennants, I wanted a table in a garden. So it's the beginning of something, but it's really clunky. I mean, I loved the plates. I thought they were fun, but the table perspective, and I'm not saying with these embroidery designs that I have perspective exactly right on anything, because this is stitching and there's some leeway, but it felt really awkward and not right. Also, I was working with a gold and sort of an orange in the background there. So in the next version, let's see. It looks like I filled the whole sky with, I went with a more sort of a salmony pink in the background, and I've now whipped the lanterns. Used the whip stitch, I put those diamonds in the middle of the lanterns, and now I've moved down from 4 plates to 2 plates on the table. You can also see now I've put a garden all around the front of the table, and I've rendered those chairs in more of a tan than gold. Because see, I think that gold for the chairs here called too much attention to them. They're just chairs. They really shouldn't have that kind of emphasis. But I like now the lanterns have emphasis, the flowers have emphasis. Another change that I went through was, you can see in this first version I was trying to figure out how to fill the pennants. So would I do them in it looks like I did a little two-tone, I did some design, and I started to realize that just filling them solidly would be great. But this still had problems. So here's the final version. In the final version, I have added some a nod to perspective with the table. I've put a line across here and I've changed the perspective so that this looks like a tablecloth dropped down straight in the front. I've just got the 2 plates. I got rid of the napkins. I think the orange in there was messing with the flow. It was too much of that bright accent color. It was making it too busy, too hard to move your eye around the design. And so I've got a vase with a flower in the center now. The chairs have stayed tan. We've got the whole garden. The pennants are filled. So that was the end of Garden Party. And this one is so much fun to stitch. Very fun to stitch because there's so many stitches. Use the outline for the greens down here in the garden, and then you've got the lazy daisy for the hyacinths and the sort of the orange brown-eyed Susans. You've got straight stitch for the tablecloth, which is really fun, and then you could render the pillows with either lazy daisy or double straight stitch. We've got the chairs that are done with a split stitch. We got all these French knots in the sky. The fireflies are the little lights out there, the satin stitch in the pennants, the whipped bat stitch in 2 colors is a lot of fun on the lantern. So that design started like this, ended like this, just had a little bit of faith. Do you guys like to stitch flowers? Are there motifs that you especially enjoy stitching? Hey Jimmy, great to see you here. Yeah, beautiful garden patio to stitch. Yeah, and I think to dream on being outside on a patio. Yeah, I'm really, I'm showing you summer designs right now, which are super fun to stitch in the winter, right? All right, so now let's talk about this design, which is Butterfly Collage. And this was inspired by, what is it? It's Somerset Media, I think, that has those beautiful magazines. And there was, the idea of an art journal page is what inspired this. And if you take a look at my first version, you'll see how, right? So I've got this rectangular, as if I were working on a piece of paper and collaging things on it, running the butterfly off the edge, inking. I wanted to get that idea of inked borders of a page, of a scallop punch down here. I had some words in. So this is my first attempt at it, and there's a lot of motifs in there. I've got I really wanted to work with that idea of two-tone, like with as if you were gessoing or stenciling through something. So I've got that going on in the butterfly, and I'm echoing it in the background in this version. I've also got like a fleur-de-lis thing going on over here. The colors, I've got quite a bright yellow, quite a yellowy green in there. So that was the very first version. Let's see which is the second. I got a whole bunch of, this one I stitched a lot. So in the next version, I'm still working with these bright colors, right? The yellow, the limey green. Now the background, I'm using bright pink with a pale pink. So I'm working through things. I've got the yellow around that. And I felt like whenever I would wake up the next morning after finishing working on this, it just felt jarring. It didn't feel it felt too busy for the eye to settle into and move around nicely. So in the next version, I went with a light with a pink in the background. You can actually see I was playing around with sort of a clay and a pink. I was trying to figure out which one to go with in the background. And I'm now inking in here with orange. I've gotten rid of that bold yellow totally. Got some lazy daisies in here. I've got I think this is called baby green. So I've gone with a much calmer green. I've gotten rid of that yellow, right? You can see I think the design feels more accessible. It feels more enjoyable to look at this way. And there's still just all these fun stitches. Like these circles are meant to be like the idea if you were doing an art journal page that you would punch out circles and you'd do some different stenciling or artwork on them. Or maybe you would stencil up or art. You would do paint and stencil on a piece of paper and then cut it. So got all those different kind of effects in there. Got these ideas of a tree growing through them. So that's that version. And then let's see, which would be. All right, then we went to the final version. So I would wake up in the morning and look at this, and the pink, I mean, you can't see it in this light. The pink was just too pink. So I went with a pale salmon now for all these triangles in the background. They're all that color. And I feel like it lets the foreground really pop. When the background becomes less busy, the foreground can pop really nicely. And I just tweaked little things like where to position these. Like these, this is a visual triangle around the outside, and those are really the only bright spots in the background. So that's how Butterfly Collage went from this design to this design. And I think it gives you a lot of fun stitches and a really balanced piece in the end. Wow, I have two more pieces. I'm really yakking up a storm here. I didn't realize I would be talking so long. Jimmy said, I like to stitch seasonal because I change my decor so often. Would love blues like flowers, have lots of blue-white pottery in my bedroom. Oh, that sounds really pretty. I like blues a lot. A lot of my designs do have blues in them. Also, my color story, I do also love. So Jimmy's color story is blue. My color story has some oranges and yellows in it. And when I play board games, of course, I'm always yellow or orange. As long as somebody else doesn't want it. All right, now, let's talk about Thanksgiving. I'm a little bit out of focus. Let's see if I can get in focus. All right, this was my very first version of our Thanksgiving design. Doesn't look very Thanksgiving-ish. There's a few things that are off there from the first design, but that's okay. Just got to have faith, right? So as I started, I absolutely knew that I wanted the pumpkin, the pie, and the cornucopia in the background, and they would just be in a more subdued color. They wouldn't have center stage. And then I wanted the turkey to pop in the foreground, and I wanted to be fun. So I tried these turquoises, and it's just too much turquoise, right? It looks more like a peacock than a turkey, and who needs that kind of misdirection, right? It just didn't seem to work. So the next version, I went to browns and I added a garnet in there. So now I'm only using the darkest teal for eyes on the feathers, and now I've got a garnet in there, which is my other sort of bold accent color to help pull out the turkey. And you can, I've cleaned up the neck. I've used a lot of rings around the center because I wanted to give lots of fun stitching experience. But then the problem that I also found now, and you can see I was working with what color to do the doily in the background. Should I go with a really pale ecru, or should I go with a little browner? And what I also decided about that was it felt a little bohemian, Middle Eastern. It didn't seem to go with the Thanksgiving Puritan kind of vibe that this design needed. So I didn't feel like there was unity in the design. So I went with a much simpler doily design in the background. So that was the Thanksgiving design. Went from this to this. And I've stitched this a few times. You can see there's one back here behind me too. I will be displaying those when I have my Thanksgiving. All right, last one that I'm going to talk about right now is our new Christmas design. So the Christmas design, the newest Christmas design this year is Christmas mantle. So I started knowing that I wanted a mantle, I mean, and I get my inspiration from things like catalogs. I had a Crate and Barrel catalog, and I was just looking at a Christmas mantle with 4 stockings hung on it, and I don't remember what was sitting on the mantle. There might have been a mirror above it, and I thought that would be a fun design to work with. So the first stitch through, I stitched the mantle in brown. I've got the gifts in red and gold. I added this grill because that was a really fun place to get fly stitches in, and the garland with Mary across it. I've got the stockings rendered in gold with a light blue inside of it. I've got a pretty pale green up here on the mantle. I think that's the green from Cuckoo Clock, and I really love that green, so I wanted to make it work, but it didn't really in the end. I put these ornaments on the tree. I thought I needed to fill this space. I had a picture of a reindeer up there in the corner, and then after I stitched it, I also realized how could I fill it in, so I just roughly made a diagonal. I made pink diagonals for the wallpaper. So in the next version, I actually got that wallpaper into the, I digitally rendered it and printed it, so I had the wallpaper set up. Still got that reindeer. Now I've gotten rid of I don't have that preponderance of gold now. If you can, come on, focus. So in this first design, there's just a big gold dominates. So now I've tried some blue. I've gotten more red up on the mantle. I'm using a darker green for the tree and for the mantle greens. I've got 3 ornaments that are all the same on the tree. I've still got that reindeer in there. And so then the next version, I went with a little bit different treatment. Some different blues. I just didn't like the blue that I had. And now some of the trees are outlined in gold, some of them are outlined in red. I added a little ball ornament over here. I took out the reindeer. It just was too busy. It was too much. It also wasn't easy to stitch. Come on, focus, camera, focus. Come on. Sorry, guys. Trying to get that camera to focus. There we go. All right. So that's the finished one with the Christmas design. So again, the goal is to give you something with lots of fun stitches. The wrapping paper has straight stitches and lazy daisies. The grill on the fireplace has the fly stitch. The stockings are outlined in split. We got little French knots. Also, I used the fly stitch for the scallops on there. Used the chain stitch for the garland, satin stitch for the little balls. There's just so many fun different stitches to put on here. And then I love the garland on the fireplace. Let's see if I can slowly go in and keep it in focus. It's the green, all those lazy daisies, and then French knots put right in the midst of them. So that's just a look at a few of the designs here. How they started, how they ended. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. I got a frog in my throat. So I hope you're finding time to create. I hope you're finding designs to stitch that make you happy. And I would love to hear about what you're stitching and what you love about what you're stitching and how you choose a design to work on, and how important the stitching experience is, how important the ability to display or gift it in the end is. I would just love to know all of that. So wishing you all some happy stitching, and I'll be back soon. Bye, guys.